Hi, I'm Maris. My sister got a house for graduating college. I got a bill for rent to stay in the room I grew up in. They toasted her with champagne, then handed me a contract like I was a stranger. But the truth? That wasn't the worst part. They forged my signature. They drained my inheritance. They used my name to fund her future, and then erased me from every photo like I was never there. What kind of family rewrites their history and deletes you from it? Would you stay? Or would you disappear too but leave a note behind? I arrived 15 minutes late, just as the second round of champagne was being poured. No one noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say a thing. My shoes were still damp from the nursing home shift, and my hair smelled faintly of cafeteria grease left over from the lunch rush at the bookstore cafe. I barely had time to change into the only dress I owned that didn't have a stain near the waistline. The dining room had been transformed. Silver-rimmed plates, crystal glasses, folded linen napkins, not the usual Hawthorne family dinner. This was for Callista, after all. Her big graduation moment. The prodigal daughter turned public relations star with a LinkedIn bio and a firm handshake that impressed every neighbor from here to Louisville. "Callie, you earned it," my father said, lifting his glass. "You stayed focused, worked hard. You didn't let anyone distract you." Everyone laughed at that, except me. I smiled with closed lips and lowered my eyes. The way my name was never spoken, only implied. In the contrast, I took my seat at the far end of the table, close to the kitchen door. The seat I always ended up in. The one with the half-wobbly leg and view of the hallway thermostat. Callista looked radiant, of course. She wore a silky cream dress and gold hoop earrings. Her nails were freshly done, French tips. She never wore anything chipped or faded. "I can't believe I'm a homeowner," she beamed, looking at Mom. "This is wild." I froze. "Homeowner?" Dad stood again, this time slower, as if building suspense. We decided not to wait. No need for surprises later. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a silver key tied with a ribbon. Brand new. 2-bedroom, downtown. A starter place, close to the office she'll be working at. Cheers erupted. Callista shrieked, covering her mouth in dramatic disbelief. I swallowed hard. The water in my glass felt heavier than it should. "You're giving her a house?" I asked, trying to sound neutral, almost amused. Dad glanced at me, eyebrows raised like it'd broken the script. "She earned it." My mother, Lorene, added quickly, "We thought it was time she had a place of her own. You know how competitive the market is." I nodded slowly, unsure if my face betrayed me. I didn't bring up how I'd been paying rent-quit on utilities since I was 19, or how I worked 2 jobs to afford my online degree, or how I used my own savings to fix their water heater last winter while Callista was in Florida on spring break. "I'm happy for you," I said to my sister, and I meant it in a strange, aching way. But it came out tight, like the smile I was forcing. She didn't notice, or didn't care. Dessert came, a lemon meringue pie, Mom's specialty. As the plates were cleared, Dad pulled something from the inside of his blazer. "Almost forgot," he said with a chuckle. He unfolded the paper and placed it gently in front of me. "What's this? Rental agreement?" he said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Starting next month, you'll be contributing $900 monthly for your room. Fair price. Market rate." Laughter again, nervous, polite. I stared at the page. It was typed, formal. It had my name in bold. "Wait," I said, my voice low. "You want me to pay $900 a month to stay in my old bedroom?" "It's time, Maris," Lorene said gently. "You're not a child anymore. You're almost 33. You've had time to figure things out." But Callista Shez, moving out. "You're staying," Dad said, finality in his voice. I nodded slowly. No argument. No raised voice. I stood up, took my plate, and walked it to the sink. The clatter of forks and spoons behind me dulled as I turned on the tap. The hot water stung my skin. My hands moved in automatic rhythm: soap, rinse, dry. I looked through the kitchen window into the dark backyard, where the string lights still hung from last summer's barbecue. Callista's laughter echoed faintly behind me. She was holding the key in her hand like a trophy. I glanced down. The plate in my hands had a crack thin, like a line drawn in pencil. I pressed my thumb to it. It didn't break. Not yet. I put the plate gently on the rack, dried my hands, and walked upstairs without saying goodnight. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a letter that made silence into a sound they couldn't ignore. The words were clinical, calculated, and legally binding. This time, I wasn't playing defense. By 6:15 the next morning, I was already awake, sitting cross-legged on my bed with a legal pad in my lap and my laptop balanced on a pillow. My coffee had gone cold beside me, untouched. I wasn't writing a journal entry or a heartfelt goodbye. I was itemizing, a ledger. Every bill had paid, every errand had run, every time had been the one to wait for the plumber, pick up dry cleaning, shovel the driveway while they were away. I had dates, receipts, even Venmo screenshots. You want me to grow up? I muttered under my breath. Fine. Let's start with numbers. The letter wasn't a confession. It was a correction. Mid-morning, I took a break to check social media. My hands moved automatically, already bracing. And there it was, Callista's new post. A glossy reel of her graduation dinner. The caption read, "Grateful beyond words. Couldn't have done it without my family." The video opened with her childhood photos. Kindergarten, Girl Scouts, her first car. Each one edited to pastel filters and cheerful piano music. I kept waiting for my face to appear. Even once. It never did. There were family shots, vacations, birthday parties. Every single group picture, I'd either been cropped out or replaced with someone else's smile. And the decorations? I recognized the custom font I'd spent hours designing on my lunch break. The floral arrangements mine. The print materials made on my own cheap home printer. The backdrop? She'd posted a photo of it with the caption, "Designed by me." My stomach tightened, but no tears came. This wasn't pain. It was documentation. Around 2 p.m., I heard the house stirring again. Callista's voice floated through the hallway laughing, giving directions. They were getting ready for the blessing party at her new house. My mother tapped lightly on my door. "Don't forget, sweetie. We're heading to Callie's around 4. Just a little thing, neighbors, some folks from the office." "I'll be ready," I said without looking up. I didn't have to go. No one said I had to. But I went anyway. I wore black. Not as a statement, just because it was clean. At the house, Callista floated around like a debutante. Her new place was pristine, staged like a catalog photo. I recognized half the decor. I'd been the one to drive her to IKEA, the one who assembled the coffee table when she didn't have time. She thanked me, publicly, once. "Maurice helped me with a few of the boring parts," she said, waving her wine glass with a casual smirk. People clapped. Someone asked for my Instagram handle. I gave them a fake one. I took photos of guests like a background character. I smiled at the right times. I complimented the food. I posed for a group shot, knowing I'd be the first one cropped out. But inside, something was shifting. I wasn't hurt. Not anymore. I was done auditioning for the role of acceptable daughter. By the time I got home, the sky had turned violet. I changed into sweatpants, wiped off the leftover makeup, and sat at my desk again. I opened the letter. The real one. Not the social script. Not the version where I smile and nod. I began a new paragraph. "You said I needed to contribute. Here is what I already have. Line by line. I listed utilities, repairs, grocery runs, gas receipts from driving my parents to doctor's appointments when they didn't want to call Uber. There were no flourishes, no poetic framing, just years of unpaid labor, typed in black and white. I scrolled back to the top. The title wasn't Goodbye. It was Record of Living Costs Rendered Invisible. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my record of truth. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was a forensic report of everything they failed to see. I woke up before the sun, the room still gray and quiet. My body wanted to stay under the weight of the blanket, but my mind was already counting. Not sheep. Transactions. Hours worked, meals cooked, holidays missed. I slipped on a hoodie and pulled out the old spiral-bound notebook I kept tucked in the back of my closet. Inside were lists, scribbled calculations, reminders, nothing anyone would look twice at. But I knew what it was. I called it my unpaid invoices, groceries, utilities, Callista's birthday banner $18.79. Dad's prescription pickup 3 times in January, gutter cleaning. Line after line, I transferred the notes to a spreadsheet on my laptop, assigning columns, date, task, cost, who benefited. I titled it My Contributions. No emotional phrasing, no drama, just data. They wanted adulthood? I'd give them documentation. Later that morning, I made eggs for myself, standing at the stove while the rest of the house stirred awake. The sound of Callista's heels clicking down the hallway was almost theatrical. She was headed to brunch again. "You working today?" she asked as she passed me in the kitchen, sunglasses already on inside the house. "No. Catching up on a few things." She nodded, sipped her almond milk latte from a to-go cup, and left like I was background noise. After the front door closed, I sat back down at the table and stared at the open spreadsheet. My eyes blurred from the screen. I needed a break, something to shake the static feeling off. And just like that, an old memory broke through. I was 16, sitting on the living room floor with pamphlets from a summer college prep program spread around me. I remember Dad's voice, casual but definitive. "You're not really the academic type, sweetheart." Mom didn't look up from folding towels. "You're more hands-on," she said, "like me." I believed them. I didn't go. Callista did the following year. They helped her pay for the application, the travel, the clothes. That memory stung less than I expected. Maybe because now, at 33, I could finally name what it was. Not lack of belief in me, just lack of interest. The doorbell rang just past noon. I recognized the voice at the door, Mrs. Aldridge from next door. She was dropping off some flyers for the neighborhood association. I stayed out of sight, sipping tea in the corner of the kitchen while Dad chatted with her. "She still living with you?" she asked, motioning toward my shoes by the door. He chuckled. "She rents the back room now, helps out around the house." I froze. That's what I was now? A tenant? A helper? He didn't correct her. Didn't say daughter. Just let it hang in the air like it was always true. I stood up slowly, poured lemonade into 2 glasses, and walked out to greet them with a smile so polite it nearly cracked my face. "That's so kind of you, Mrs. Aldridge. I'll make sure Mom gets these." She nodded, looked slightly startled by my presence, and waved goodbye. I walked back inside, set the glasses on the table, and held my breath. That evening, I found Mom folding laundry in her room. The same room I used to sneak into as a kid when I had nightmares. The same hands now folding napkins had once buttoned my coat before school. I sat on the edge of the bed. She didn't look up. Why didn't I deserve a home, too? She kept folding for a second longer, then set the towel down. "Because she needed the help," she said softly. "And you always figured things out yourself." That was it. That was her explanation. I didn't argue, didn't cry. I just stood up and walked out. The kind of silence that isn't confused or wounded anymore. Just done. By 10 p.m., I had a new email account. I bookmarked 3 listings for studio apartments near Louisville. Not perfect, but livable. Small kitchens, clean floors, decent lighting, and no shared family dinner tables. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, arms crossed over my chest like I was bracing for a wave that already passed. They thought they were raising someone soft, but they were raising someone observant. I stopped waiting for a sign. I became the signature. It wasn't escape I was after. It was recognition. And if they wouldn't give it, I'd take it in full. If they forged my name on paper, what else had they written me out of? I told them I was running errands. That's how easy it had becoming without blinking. Mom nodded from behind her mug. Dad barely glanced up from the newspaper. Callista was still upstairs, probably curating her next inspirational post about building a future from scratch. Instead, I drove to a small bank on the corner of Manchester and Rose. Not our usual branch, not the one they used. This one was where Grandma Evelyn used to bank back when she still signed her own checks and spoke without being corrected mid-sentence. The teller directed me to a woman in a tucked-away office. Her nameplate read Trina Bellamy, Client Services Manager. She had calm eyes, a beige sweater, and the tone of someone who had seen enough to know when not to ask too many questions. "I'm wondering," I began, folding my hands together to hide the slight tremble in my fingers, "if there's still an active trust in my name." My grandmother set one up. "Evelyn Marwood." She typed slowly. Click, pause, click. Her brow furrowed. "Maris DeWitt, right?" I nodded. "The account does exist. It was emptied about 17 months ago." My stomach tightened. "Can you tell me where the money went?" "Tuition payments," she said, after a glance at the screen. "University of Kentucky. 4 disbursements. And the authorization was signed by your father. He had power of attorney on file." I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I forced my voice to stay even. "May I see the documents?" She hesitated. "Technically, yes. Since the account was in your name." She turned the monitor toward me and clicked on a scanned document. I saw the line near the bottomy name printed neatly, and below it, a signature. It looked like mine. To someone else, it probably was close enough. But I knew better. The loops in the M were too round. The pressure was uneven. And the D had a flourish I'd never used. Callista. She used to mimic my signature for fun. It had become a party trick in high school. "Look how close I can get," she'd laugh, handing back a napkin with my name scrawled in cursive. I'd smiled then. I don't remember why. Now it wasn't funny. "Can I get a copy of this?" I asked. Trina printed it without a word. She slid it across the desk like a dealer sliding a card across green felt. I slipped it into my bag, thanked her quietly, and walked out into the afternoon haze. Back home, I pulled open my file drawer and started digging. Old tax forms, enrollment confirmations, mail forwarded from years past. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I found it anyway. Patterns. I highlighted every place my name appeared, letters I didn't remember sending, permissions I never granted, applications I never saw. I sat there, surrounded by paper, a fortress of silence they'd built using my name as the foundation. That evening, I made a decision. I scanned every document, one by one, and uploaded them to a cloud drive with a passcode only I knew. I created a burner email. I messaged someone I trusted, Tanya, a friend from the bookstore, just one line. "If anything happens, this folder explains everything." Then I drove to a gas station, paid cash for a prepaid phone, and created a new number tied to none of the old accounts. I didn't want to disappear. That's what they were counting on. I wanted to reappear louder, clearer, undeniable. I wanted proof that they had tried to erase me. The paper trail didn't just lead back to them, it pointed at what they were trying to erase. If they could forge my name on legal documents, what else had they erased me from? That question haunted me for 2 nights straight. It circled in my head like a vulture, waiting for me to collapse under its weight. On the 3rd night, I couldn't take the pacing anymore. I stopped in the hallway, stared at the hallway closet door, and pulled it open. Behind the winter coats and a crate of old cords was something I hadn't touched in years, Grandma Evelyn's old laptop. I had brought it home after her funeral, still smelling faintly of lavender and old paper. I didn't know why I kept it. But now, my hands trembled as I carried it to the kitchen table like it was a locked chest with a buried map inside. I powered it on. The screen flickered weakly, and then Evelyn's desktop appeared frozen in time. Her background image was a black and white photo of her garden, the one with the stone bench and the crooked oak tree. My fingers hovered over the trackpad like I was about to detonate something. Folders lined the screen in her familiar, meticulous style. Recipes, wills, photos. I clicked through them like a ghost retracing her steps. And then I saw it. A plain folder tucked away inside a folder called Archive 3. No capital letters. Just correspondence. Inside were PDF hundreds of emails, mostly with her lawyer. I skimmed until one caught my eye. My chest tightened as I opened it. From Lorna Griggs to Roward Lowe. Subject, Trust transfer objections. Kate, 3 years ago, the words blurred, but I forced myself to read. I don't think Darwin should have this much control over Maris Fund. Evelyn wanted it protected. Please advise. My breath caught. She had tried to push back once. There it was, in writing. She questioned it, but just beneath that was the lawyer's reply. Unless you contest now, the power of attorney stands. And then, 2 months later, one more line in a different thread. Proceed as discussed. Let's not drag this out. Callista's tuition depends on it. That was it. Not a legal argument. Not a compromise. Just convenience. Just another choice made without me, about me. My hands clenched into fists, trembling before I even noticed. She didn't fight. She folded, and then buried the evidence. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just left. I took a walk around the block, passing the familiar touchstones of my neighborhood, the Aldridge house with the roses that bloomed too early each year, the faded Help Wanted sign still crooked in the window of the diner, the one where Grandma used to take me for cherry pie. Everything looked the same, but inside me, something had permanently shifted. When I got home, my mother was on the porch folding laundry, a basket balanced on her lap. Her hands moved automatically, shirt after shirt, like someone doing a task they'd performed so many times, they'd stopped thinking about it. I sat beside her in silence and placed a printed copy of that final email on the table between us. She didn't touch it, didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on the towel she was folding. Why didn't you stop him? I asked. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was low, almost weary. He said if I pushed it, he'd stop paying for Callista's education too. She didn't say she was sorry. She didn't defend it either. She just admitted it like a simple fact. And in her tone, I heard something colder than guilt. I heard acceptance, like she had made her choice and lived with it. I didn't nod. I didn't argue. I stood and walked back inside. That silence, it wasn't a standoff. It wasn't waiting for a resolution. It was the sound of a door closing. The next day, I ran into Kyle Fields at the pharmacy. High school acquaintance. Quarterback back then. Nose still a little crooked from senior year. Hey, Maris? He said, surprised. Wow. I thought you moved away. Nope, I replied. Still around. I guess I heard wrong. Didn't your mom say you dropped out or something? That you were working on your GED? I blinked. No, I graduated last year. Bachelor's in behavioral health. Online, but fully accredited. His face flushed. Oh, must have been a mix-up. It wasn't. It was a narrative they crafted when I didn't fit the picture they wanted to show. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rewrite the letter. I rebuilt it. It wasn't a list of what they'd done to me anymore. It was a record of what I had done despite them. I added a scan of my diploma. The day I enrolled. The day I graduated. My tax forms that proved I worked every semester. Screenshots of professors' congratulatory emails. Comments on my final thesis. Awards. Certifications. Then I changed the document's title. Not my contributions. Not anymore. Now it read, What you chose not to see. I wasn't chasing an apology. I was reclaiming clarity. I was reclaiming my name, not the one they erased from documents, but the one they buried with silence, with rumors, with strategic omissions. I had mourned what they took. Now I was archiving what I built, and this time I wasn't waiting to be acknowledged. I wasn't asking to be seen anymore. I was preparing to be undeniable. The next morning, I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through my online banking history like I'd done 1,000 times, but this time, not just out of habit. I wasn't budgeting, I was hunting. Something didn't sit right about how fast Callista had gotten that house. It wasn't just the key in her hand, it was how no one asked questions, no loans mentioned, no down payment stress, just gifted. I pulled up the PDF of my grandmother's trust, what was left of it, and matched it with the mortgage papers I'd photographed during the housewarming. One of the closing documents had been left on the kitchen counter. Sloppy. It took 15 minutes before the match lit up in front of me. The monthly withdrawals matched the exact payment amount for Callista's mortgage, every single month, from an account bearing my name originally funded by Evelyn Marwood. I froze. Not from confusion, from recognition. They hadn't just misused the trust, they'd redirected it entirely. I printed the last 12 months of statements and circled the matching figures with a red pen. Then I pulled out a blank envelope, slid the papers inside, and wrote Mom in my neatest cursive. I found her in the laundry room folding hand towels. Still folding, always folding. I handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly, and when she saw the first circled figure, she flinched like I'd slapped her. "This isn't a misunderstanding," I said. "It's theft." She looked at me like I'd said something indecent. "Maris, please don't blow this out of proportion. You don't understand the agreements we had." I cut her off. "No, I understand perfectly. And I'm not protecting this family's silence anymore." Her eyes widened. I saw something in them I hadn't seen in a long time. Not fear, disbelief. Like she truly thought I would never say that out loud. She reached for my hand. "Just keep it in the family. We've always handled things our way." I pulled back. "I'm not in the family, remember?" I rent the back room. That night, I stayed up past midnight drafting an email. I didn't address it to anyone in particular. I just wrote, "When success is stolen, who claps at the ceremony?" I attached redacted versions of the documents, removing names, keeping figures, screenshots of matching withdrawals, Callista's public home listing. Then I sent it anonymously to a local community blog run by Pastor Ray's daughter, who loved investigative stories and had an Instagram following just big enough to make people nervous. The post went live the next morning. It didn't name names, but it didn't need to. The numbers spoke, and our zip code wasn't that big. By evening, I was back at the dinner table. Dad served roast beef. Callista poured herself wine. Mom was too quiet. No one mentioned the post, but Callista glanced at me longer than usual. She didn't smile, didn't smirk. She just stared, trying to read me. Dad barely touched his food. His fork moved around like he was rearranging thoughts he couldn't control. Mom kept her hands in her lap, avoiding eye contact altogether. I chewed slowly, wiped my mouth, and said nothing. Because for the first time since all this started, their silence didn't scare me. It confirmed I'd finally become the loudest person in the room. Silence didn't protect them anymore. It only made their shame louder. And when they saw I wouldn't flinch, they stopped pretending. That's when the war began. They expected me to flinch, to apologize, to shrink back into silence like I always had. But this time, I didn't. And that was all it took. The mask slipped. The message came through on a quiet Thursday afternoon. No subject line, just a name I hadn't seen in years. Heather Millis. We'd gone to high school together. She was always more Callista's friend than mine. But there was a time we were close enough to share earbuds, order fries in threes, and swap charger cords in the backseat of Mom's car like it meant something. Her message was short. "Thought you should see this." Attached was a screenshot. A conversation between my father and Callista, dated 2 weeks before the house blessing. My hand went cold before I even finished reading it. "She's always been difficult. You're the one who deserves everything. Don't feel guilty." I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or clench my jaw. It didn't sting, not in the way betrayal is supposed to hurt. It was clean, cold, like seeing your name on a list of people who didn't make it. Because this wasn't news. It was confirmation. Not of what I feared, but of what I already knew, and just hadn't allowed myself to say out loud. I hadn't been overlooked. I'd been selected to be erased. That night, I poured a glass of water and sat at my desk. I didn't pace. I didn't scream. I opened my laptop, clicked into Callista's business page. There it was, the party video. The one her PR firm helped edit to perfection. I watched it once, then again, frame by frame. I was there. I knew I was. But in every group shot, the camera had shifted just enough. In some photos, I was cropped out completely. In others, my hand or shoulder was barely visible before the scene cut away. It was meticulous, professional. I had been edited out of my own family's narrative. And that's when something cracked open inside me. Not rage, not revenge. That had passed. This was something sharper, like waking up. They wanted a version of our family without me? Fine. I showed them what that looked like. I pulled open Photoshop, imported screenshots. On one side, the original family photos. On the other, the cropped ones from Callista's public pages. I placed them side by side. And then I added my father's message across the top, in a clean, simple white font. "You're the one who deserves everything. Don't feel guilty." Beneath it, I wrote a caption. "When you're erased from your own history, maybe it's time to rewrite the story." No names, no tags, no drama, just facts. But this town wasn't big. The church grapevine was faster than the internet. And Callista's curated followers? They lived for drama disguised as authenticity. I hit post at 9:17 p.m. By sunrise, it had 427 shares. By noon, I had messages from people I hadn't heard from in a decade. "This can't be real, right? I always wondered why you weren't in those photos. You were always the quiet one." At 2:43 p.m., Callista's firm issued a vague PR statement about media asset miscommunication. At 4:00 p.m., my father was summoned to an emergency board meeting at the Community Foundation. At 5:11 p.m., I got a text from Mom. "What are you doing, Maris?" I didn't answer. Instead, I posted again. This time, just one image. On the left, our family portrait, untouched, unfiltered. Me standing beside Callista, my hand on Dad's shoulder. On the right, the same photo from her site, only I was gone. In my place, a gap. Just space. Like I never existed. No caption, just reality. By dinner that night, the house was quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. The air hung heavy. Dad cleared his throat 3 times and said nothing. Mom passed the butter, like it weighed 100 pounds. Callista barely picked at her salad. I sat back. I sipped my water. And I smiled. Not out of spite, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. They had tried to crop me out of the picture. I gave them a picture they couldn't crop. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about being loud or vindictive or dramatic. It was about truth, about proof. About letting them feel, for one moment, what it was like to look for someone and realize you had written them out. They erased me from the footage, so I made myself the headline. And now, it wasn't about being accepted anymore. It was about making sure they couldn't look away, no matter how hard they tried. The message came through at 8:52 p.m. I was standing in the kitchen, waiting for the microwave to finish reheating a sad bowl of spaghetti when my phone buzzed. Rowan Vega. The name blinked across the screen, like a ghost from a timeline I thought had buried. We hadn't spoken in years, not since high school. Not since that community theater play where I barely had a line. He was always more Callista's friend than mine, loyal to her orbit, laughing at her jokes, tagging her in memes I was never included in. He'd messaged me twice before. It left both unread. But something about tonight. Maybe it was the silence of my apartment. Maybe it was the years of swallowing every insult like it was mine to carry. Something made me click. The message was short, just 5 words. "Hey, you probably don't want to hear from me." But I still had this. Attached was an audio file. No explanation, no subject line. Just a raw .m4a file dated 2 years ago. I sat down on the couch, legs crossed, the cold bowl of spaghetti forgotten on the coffee table. I turned the volume up. Then I hit play. Callista's voice came through the speaker. Unmistakable, slurred, soaked in alcohol but clear. Too clear. Dad said it's fine. It was just her tuition. She wouldn't have used it right anyway. I deserved it more. And then she laughed. Not loud, not evil, just small. Hesitant. Like even she wasn't sure if what she said was funny or forgivable. My hands shook. But I pressed play again. Then again. By the 3rd time, My spine started to rise, like it remembered how to hold itself upright. My body, which had spent years folding in, hiding, second-guessing, was suddenly still. Sharp. Aware. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I documented. I paired the audio with what I'd kept over the years, screenshots of family photos, where I'd been cropped out, certificates where my name had been removed, emails about the trust fund I supposedly never touched, documents with signatures I didn't remember giving. Then I wrote a single line on my social feed, erased on paper, rewritten in silence. Until now. No names, no edits, just the truth. And I posted it. By morning, it had taken on a life of its own. First, a Facebook community group picked it up. Then, a college watchdog account reposted it. Strangers began recognizing the voice. Others recognized the story. Comments flooded in, some with disbelief, some with fury, many with solidarity. A few even mentioned they'd been classmates with Callista and had heard rumors, but never knew the whole story. By noon, Callista's engagement announcement vanished from her timeline. By 3, I received an anonymous email. The sender's address was untraceable, but the tone was formal, curt, almost nervous. You didn't hear this from me, but her enrollment fee came from an account under your name. Our system still lists you as the payer. Her records never included your family's home address. I logged into my old student portal, pulled up the archived documents. Sure enough, self-funded student. My name, my records, my identity. They hadn't just removed me from the narrative. They'd inserted her in my place, on forms, in systems, in spaces I'd been told I wasn't worthy of. For years, I thought I didn't matter. But they hadn't ignored me. They'd used me, quietly, conveniently. And the weight of that realization wasn't crushing, it was clarifying. That evening, headlines shifted. A quiet announcement was made on the neighborhood website. Joseph Hartley has stepped down from the foundation board for personal reasons. My father, the man who'd said nothing when I disappeared from family holidays, who called me emotional for asking about the trust, was no longer on the board he cherished. Callista deleted her entire social media presence. And then there was the letter. A real one, handwritten, on floral stationery that looked like it came from Mom's church circle. The signature was neat, familiar. We need to talk, just us. Civilly. I folded it once, then twice. I didn't cry. I didn't hope. Instead, I opened my email. Composed a reply. Short, final. Civility comes after truth. And you haven't said it yet. That was all. I wasn't begging for restoration. I was revealing what they tried to bury. Healing didn't come wrapped in an apology. It didn't arrive with a bow tied in remorse or a dramatic reckoning. No. Healing began the moment I stopped asking for their approval and started telling the truth. That morning was cold. The wind had teeth, tugging at the hem of my coat as I walked the familiar path toward the cemetery. The sky was dry, but the earth felt wet beneath my boots, like it had been weeping in secret, too proud to show it. I felt that quiet grief, the kind that doesn't announce itself, but lives in the bones. I reached Evelyn's grave and knelt down. The stone had collected a layer of fallen leaves, and I brushed them away gently, my fingers grazing the carved letters of her name. I pulled a yellowed envelope from my bag. I had found it tucked in the bottom of an old cedar box in her attic, hidden, sealed, and worn thin by time. I opened it carefully, the paper soft at the edges. The ink had faded, but the words had not lost their weight. I read aloud in a voice just above a whisper, like I was speaking to the roots beneath me. They will call you ungrateful. Let them. You are whole. I stopped. Let the words settle in the air. Around me, the wind stilled as if listening. They will say you've turned your back on family. But what they mean is, you stopped playing a part that was never written for you. A breath caught in my throat, but it wasn't sadness. It was release. The kind of truth that doesn't hurt, only frees. Back at home that afternoon, I found a message in my inbox. It was from Jonas Elroy, Callista's ex. We hadn't spoken in years, And even when we had, it was brief. He never quite fit in with our family's polished performances, so they cast him aside too. Hey, the message began. I know it's probably strange hearing from me, but I figured you deserved this. Attached were a series of screenshots, old messages from Callista things she'd sent him late at night, I assumed, when she thought no one would ever see. Grandma always loved her more. That's why I had to be perfect. She didn't even try, and Evelyn still chose her. I had to earn everything, even love. I stared at the screen, not with surprise, but with clarity. The cruelty hadn't come from me doing something wrong. It had come from me existing outside the script they'd written. I was never the failure they said I was. I was just the one who refused to be molded. For the first time, I didn't feel angry at her. I felt tired. And maybe even sorry. Not enough to excuse what she'd done, but enough to see that her war with me had always been a war with herself. She wasn't better, just louder. Later that week, I met my mother at a coffee shop she picked. A quiet place with soft music, where people seemed to whisper even when they laughed. She sat across from me, her hands folded neatly like a student in trouble, wearing a pink cardigan I'd never seen before. Her eyes were swollen, as if she hadn't slept. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she began, voice delicate. For what people are saying. It's hurting our name. I waited. She didn't add anything. You're not sorry for what you did, I said flatly. You're sorry people found out. That's not the same thing. Her bottom lip trembled. Maybe she wanted me to offer a bridge, a touch, a way back. But that wasn't mine to give anymore. We didn't say much after that. The following week, I signed a lease. Not for an apartment, but for a dream. A 2-story house near the edge of town, painted pale blue with white shutters. I named it Evelyn House. It wasn't extravagant, but it was clean, it was safe, and it was mine. It would be transitional housing for women like me, women written out of their families' narratives, women told they were too much, too little, too wrong. Women who needed a page to start again. I didn't put my name on the door, no brass plaque, no ego. But every key I handed over, every freshly made bed, every pantry restocked was a page in a book I was finally writing for myself. When we held the first open house, I stood by the steps and watched a young woman with a duffel bag walk up the path. Her posture was hesitant, her eyes cautious. She paused at the door, like she wasn't sure she belonged. Then she stepped inside, and I felt it. Not regret. Not even triumph. Just the ache that comes with choosing real peace over performance. Over pretending, over pleasing. I no longer needed them to say I had been right. I just needed to stop pretending they ever were. And I had. Sometimes survival isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to walk away and when to stand still long enough for the truth to echo louder than denial ever could. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they deserve your silence. You are allowed to protect your peace, your name, your future, even if it means becoming the villain in someone else's version of the story. Family isn't built by guilt. It's built by accountability. And healing doesn't always look like reunion. It can look like choosing to move forward without carrying the weight of being misunderstood. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between your truth and your role in the family? What did it cost you? Or maybe you're still carrying something no one else sees. If so, this space is yours too. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment with one or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, let me know why it matters. And if you want more stories like this one, full of hard truths and quiet courage, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing.